When you're creating a photo, there are lots of elements that decide how good or bad the final product is, the final image. Composition is one of those elements that are crucial. You need to understand what is composition, how to use it, how to apply the composition rules, and how you can position yourself inside the landscape to take advantage of everything that is around you and create a really interesting image.
Let's start with this composition tip number one and talking about supporting diagonals. And let me just draw some lines over here to understand a little bit what I'm talking about. Now, this peak over here is the subject. This is the final point. And I'm having this diagonal that goes up and points to the subject. Now, a very important diagonal in this photo is this one over here, because this is the supporting diagonal. It's in a counter position. It's in the opposite position with this one over here. So this acts like a support diagonal. It's a good foundation. It's a base for the rest of the photo to develop on. Let's take a look at another example. This one over here, it's a little bit different because I'm having this really long diagonal over here and then this one again. And the subject is the peak in the distance, that it's roughly positioned kind of where these two diagonals are really close to each other. I found out that if two lines are intersecting at some point or they are becoming really close to each other, this is the power area. This is the area on which if I draw an imaginary vertical, this is the area where I should place the subject. Now I know it's a funny diagram, but if you followed along the explanation, it makes sense. Composition tip number two is about minimalist. In my personal opinion, whenever I have the chance to do a minimalist composition, I think this is the holy grail of landscape photography, because the simplicity of a minimalist composition, it transcends. It makes the photo so simple and yet so complex, and it draws the attention of the viewer in that photo. And I'll show you some photos. For example, this one over here, and I'm only capturing the mountain over here, and then I'm only having the reflection, and it's a simple composition. There is no other elements in this one. And usually in minimalist compositions, you can break the rule of thirds. As you can see over here, I place the horizon line right in the middle, and I'm also having this big mountain in the middle of the shot. You can break the rule of thirds in both directions, horizontal and vertical, or only in one direction. But for me, I think it went really well with this composition. Now, in this image, for example, I have 2/3 of the sky and 1/3 the water, and I'm only capturing this small piece of land that is invading the water. The storm clouds that are above in this area over here are almost the same color as the water. So they're acting both like the same negative space. And there's a really powerful contrast between these two areas and this small piece of land that is also covered in snow. Another thing that I really liked was the triangular shape of the land, and this helps because it focuses the attention of the viewer. This peak of the mountain was my subject, and I was photographing, and in the beginning I was framing it something like this. I was using this as a long diagonal going up, a shorter diagonal from this side, and having this as a subject. After doing some of these photos, I noticed that there are these clouds over here that are darker, and at some point I saw this bird flying, and I just took the shot. And I think this is really interesting. I'm having almost like the mountain, it's not the subject anymore, and this small bird becomes the subject. Now, because it's so small, it's not really 100% a subject, but the whole thing, something like this, becomes the point of interest. Now the clouds here in the upper part help a lot because they are darker and they point the attention of the viewer back into the frame. With this photo over here, I did a long exposure, and the white that you see in this area is the foam of the water, of the waves. And I only included this rock in the distance, and it's almost like it's sitting on this ethereal thing that is resulted from the long exposure.
Now, before moving to tip number 3, I think it's worth mentioning that it doesn't matter if you are a full-time photographer or you're doing this only as a hobby. Your photos need a home, or better said, they need a website. I recently teamed up with Zyro, and they are also sponsoring the video from today. I decided it's time to start building a more professional looking website that also has an e-commerce component that will feature my courses or my ebook, and that will also include my workshops or the photos I'm making. And working with Zyro was a very easy choice to make because their affordability, the prices they're having on their packages are unbeatable, and the features that are offering in those packages, I think that are really great and really worth the money. If you don't need the online store component and you just need a really beautiful website to exhibit your work, then you pay only $2.61 per month, which is really, really low. And you still get unlimited storage, unlimited bandwidth, and you also get a free domain for the first year with any yearly plan. I'm using their business plan, which also includes the e-commerce component, and it's still a bargain at just $4.41 a month. Another important aspect for me was how easy it was to create the website and then do the upgrades along the way. And Zyro could not be more user-friendly. Everything is just drag and drop. You create a page, you decide if it's visible or not in the main menu, and then you start adding sections to the page, and each section can have their own elements, and you design your own website in a visual style. They're offering lots of pre-made templates that are ready to use. You just configure them and you use them. But I found out that using their AI to generate the website was much more interesting for me. I just specified the pages that I want, the color scheme, the fonts, and the website was created. All I needed was to configure it and make it my own. While I was working on the website, I got stuck and I had some questions, but I found out that their 24/7 live chat support is really working, and they're really answering your questions, and they're helping you to figure out solutions for you to go on and continue building your website the way you want it or the way you need it to build it. If you don't like the product, you get your money back in 30 days, so why not give it a try? You can grab Zyro's deal for a limited time only. Get an exclusive limited time discount plus 3 months for free and a free domain for a year with any yearly plan. Use my code PhotoTom or click the following link to get the exclusive deal.
Composition tip number 3, it's about creating depth in layers. I think that as a landscape photographer, it's really important for you to create the sensation of depth because you add another dimension to your photos. For example, over here we have this foreground plane, then we have the middle plane, and then in the background we have the subject. What helps a lot is the fact that the subject receives light from the sun. It was a cloudy day and there was a gap in the clouds, and the subject receives the sunlight, and because of that you have a separation between areas, and now you have a true sensation of depth. In this situation, it was a sunny day, but because I positioned myself in this big shadow that also has a huge support diagonal, and I'm using this trail as a strong leading line going into the distance, I have two areas. This is area number 1, or zone number 1, and this is zone number 2. Over here I have this really dark mountain in the foreground, and because of that there's a separation between this zone and this zone. Composition tip number 4 is about leading lines, and leading lines are the most used elements when you want to focus the attention of the viewer to something. And there are all sorts of leading lines, and in my photos I used main leading lines, something like this, which is a line that points directly to the subject, but then I have supporting leading lines. They are kind of like supporting diagonals, but they act a little different because they are a lot smaller and they all point in the same direction, and that is to the subject. For example, over here, the ray of light becomes a leading line that goes or points the attention of the viewer to the peak over here that has a high contrast and becomes the subject of the photo. Or for example, right here where I have this road, and this road becomes a leading line. Composition tip number 5 is to fill the frame. Now, even if you're filling the frame, you still need elements that act like composition elements. For example, this tree, yes, it's true that it fills the entire frame, but still is composed in a way that, for example, speaks about the rule of thirds, because you kind of have the main focus in this area over here that is positioned in the lower third area of the photo. Another thing is that I'm using the branches as a way to guide the attention of the viewer through the frame. In this photo over here, yes, these big rock formations are filling the frame, but I'm using the cloud movement to kind of like suggest a direction to the viewer, to point the attention of the viewer to these elements. In this photo over here, again, I'm using the rule of thirds, placing the trunk of the tree on the right side of the image, and I'm creating kind of like a connection between this trunk and the small branch, and I'm having the subject displayed in this area.
That was it for today. I hope you found the information useful. Don't forget about the limited time offer deal that you can get with Zyro if you're using the code Phototome or following the link displayed on the screen, that you can also find it in the description of this video. Until next time, keep on photographing, because it's the only way to get better. Bye bye.